Hi there. Are you ready to relax and fall asleep? Let me tell you a little story to help you drift off peacefully. It was a night drowned in crimson light. Lanterns hung heavy across the Tamana, their red glow shimmering on rain-soaked tiles, casting long, trembling reflections. The drums of the bridal procession had long since faded, leaving only the soft murmur of the spring rain and the heavy stillness of waiting. Inside the grand hall, I knelt, hidden beneath a bridal veil. The air was thick with the scent of incense, sweet and almost suffocating. I could hear the quiet crackle of oil lamps and the faint, nervous shifting of servants just beyond the screen doors. Beneath layers of fine silk, I felt the steady, calm rhythm of my own heartbeat. It was the pulse of someone who had already accepted their fate. Tonight, the master of the manor, Talianchi, was taking a spouse, but not a maiden from a noble house, nor the daughter of any powerful family. He was taking a man. Me. Across the capital, the whispers had already started. They said Talianchi had gone mad, that grief over his late wife had twisted his mind. But those who knew him better, those who understood the intricate web of power he commanded, they whispered something else entirely. That everything he did had a purpose, and no decision of his was ever made without a reason. The grand doors creaked open, and the hall fell into a profound silence. Footsteps echoed slow, deliberate, each one heavy with authority. He appeared, dressed not in celebratory red, but in stark black brocade. His face was a mask, unreadable in the pale, flickering lantern light. Every step he took carried the weight of command, the quiet arrogance of a man who had stood before kings and never once bowed his head. He stopped directly in front of me. The moment stretched, breathless and heavy with unspoken words. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he reached out and lifted the veil. I looked up, and our eyes met. In that single, fleeting gaze, the world seemed to still. The rain outside slowed to a whisper. The flames in the lamps bent low, and for a single, suspended heartbeat, all sound vanished. His face, when I finally saw it clearly, was sculpted and severe, but his eyes held a flicker of something I couldn't name. I held his gaze, my own expression betraying neither fear nor defiance, only a quiet understanding, as if I had seen this very moment in a dream long ago. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was low and controlled, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "Do you regret this?" he asked. A faint smile touched my lips, the kind that hides both a universe of pain and a strange sense of peace. "If I did," I replied softly, "would it change anything?" Before he could answer, a roll of thunder echoed outside, shaking the very foundations of the manor. From the back of the hall, a sharp, brittle laugh shattered the tension. It was Ella, lady, one of Liangxi's wives. "So, this is the one," she purred. "The one who has captured our lord's heart. How curious." Then came another voice, soft as silk, but sharper than a shard of jade. It was Zhao Lady, another of his wives. "Perhaps we should all learn to call him Madame Gu now," she said sweetly. "The world must surely learn to adapt to our lord's unique tastes." The servants visibly trembled, and a chill swept through the hall. I saw Liangqi's jaw tighten, his body tensing, as he turned slightly toward them. But before he could speak, I reached out and my hand brushed against his sleeve, a single, fleeting touch, a silent plea. "Let them speak," I whispered, my voice just for him. We both knew this would happen. There was no anger in my tone, only a quiet resolve, a calm that concealed the glint of steel beneath. The wedding rites continued. Cups of wine were lifted, vows were exchanged, and we bowed before ancestral tablets that seemed to watch us with cold, indifferent eyes. Every motion was a performance, every word a careful step and a dangerous dance. When the hall finally emptied, leaving just the two of us, Liangqi walked to the window. He stood there for a long time, watching the rain drip from the eaves, his silhouette a dark, lonely figure against the dying light of the lanterns outside. Behind him, I moved to the low table and began to pour tea. My movements were steady and precise, each gesture measured, the clink of porcelain the only sound in the vast, quiet room. At last, he spoke, his voice barely a murmur, directed at the rain-streaked glass. "This marriage will bring you nothing but whispers and scorn." I placed a steaming cup of tea on the table before him, the fragrant steam rising between us. A small, genuine smile touched my lips. "Then let me be your whisper," I said softly. "If the world mocks you, I will be the silence that listens." He turned from the window then, his gaze finally meeting mine again. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his expression still unreadable, but the hardness in his eyes seemed to soften, just for a second. Outside, the final lantern flickered and died, plunging the courtyard into darkness. Only the rain remained steady, endless, falling like a quiet prayer across the tiled roofs of the Thai manor. And within that silence, within the walls of that grand, lonely house, two souls began their slow descent into the hidden wars of love, power, and the fragile, dangerous peace they would have to build between them. This was not a beginning born of love, but of necessity. It was a pact, a strategy, a fortress built against a hostile world. And as I looked at the powerful, enigmatic man who was now my husband, I knew that every day in this manor would be a battle, but it was a battle I was ready to fight. Autumn came softly to the Ta residence. The courtyards were hushed, perfumed faintly with osmanthus. Beneath the carved eaves, the last petals fell upon damp stone, and distant lanterns swayed like dimmed hearts. In the stillness of Jingu Court, Juduan lived like water in a sealed jar, clear, still, and fathomless. His voice never rose. His sleeves never fluttered without meaning. The servants feared him not for cruelty, but for quietness. His gaze saw too much, and his patience was colder than winter. The other wives whispered behind painted fans. They spoke of favors, of smiles from the master, of whose embroidery he lingered to admire. Yet Juduan, who never sought attention, who seldom joined the gatherings, somehow drew it most. He became the name they spoke even in dreams, the one who neither pleaded nor fought, yet ruled the household by grace alone. Then came the rumor. One of the secondary wives Ladili fell ill after supper. The physician spoke of spoiled tea, the maids of jealous hands. Every glance turned toward Jinui Court. Gudan made no defense. He knelt before the ancestral shrine, his face pale in the candlelight. In a household like Tat, guilt was not decided by truth, but by affection, and affection was the most fragile weapon of all. Wenti Lianch, the master of the house, returned that night. Rain clung to his robe and the smell of iron lingered in the air. He stood for a long time in the doorway, watching Gu Duan light the incense, the flame trembling as if afraid. He said nothing, and because he said nothing, the matter was settled. Lady Li died at dawn, but no blame was cast, no exile decreed, only silent civi, deliberate, merciless. In the days that followed, Talyangchi spent more nights at Jinyu Court. The servants began to speak again, though in softer voices. Some said Gudoi's beauty had bewitched the master. Others said he was too clever, that he had twisted affection into power. Yet Gudor knew the truth. Affection was never power. It was only a chain light enough to wear, heavy enough to drown. And in another wing of the residence, Zhou Shay, the young concubine, sat before her bronze mirror, eyes veiled in candlelight. She had seen the master's carriage that night. She had seen where it stopped. Her smile, faint as drifting smoke, curved at the corners. If love could not be shared, she thought, then let it burn everything it touched. Outside, those manthas continued to bloom, their scent clinging to the dusk like a promise the wind could not carry away. Winter settled quietly over the Ta residence. From the tiled roofs, frost dripped in thin silver lines, falling onto stone courtyards that had forgotten warmth. The garden pond was sealed in a glassy sheen of ice, where the reflection of withered willows trembled beneath the pale sky. Servants moved like ghosts, their breaths visible in the cold. Every sound, the sweep of a broom, the crack of bamboo in the wind, felt too loud, as though the air itself might shatter. Inside Jingyu Court, Guden sat before his embroidery frame. A single lamp burned beside him, its flames small and patient. The silk beneath his fingers shimmered faintly, plum blossoms upon white, each petal precise as a sigh. He had not stepped outside his quarters since the day Lady L died. Rumor traveled faster than light. It slipped through corridors, clung to the hems of servants' robes, and whispered beneath painted screens. They said Gudwun's tea had been the last she drank. They said his hands, so delicate, once poured poison as calmly as he now poured ink. No one dared ask the truth in great houses. Truth was the first thing that froze. By the third week of snow, the stillness began to rot. Lady Zhao, the youngest wife, filled the empty silence with laughter too bright for winter. Her quarters blazed with color, crimson curtains, silk flowers, even when the gardens lay bare. Her beauty was like flame against frost, and everyone knew flames longed to consume. One evening, a soft storm rolled in, the sky bruised violet. Lanterns swung under the eaves, their light trembling in the wind. From afar, the main Holglod Talyancha was hosting a gathering for the household. Music drifted faintly through the snow, mingled with the scent of warm wine. But Kudin did not attend. He remained by the window, the frostlit garden reflected in his eyes. The sound of zither strings reached him only as memory, a distant echo of nights long past, when laughter meant safety and affection was not a wound. Somewhere in the main courtyard, a porcelain cup shattered. Voices rose, frantic, sharp. The snow outside his window glowed red for an instant, as though fire had bloomed beneath it. Then, silence. When Don Camija, lady's maid, was seen kneeling before the ancestral hall, her hands stained with blood. The concubine had lost her child. The household froze. Gudu's courtyard became a shrine of whispers once again. That night, Talyanchi returned to Jingyi Hall. He stood for a long time at the threshold. The wind followed him in, carrying the faint scent of medicine, of ink, and something heavier, grief, perhaps. But Kudin did not attend. He remained by the window, the frostlit garden reflected in his eyes. He did not turn when the husband entered. He did not kneel, nor speak. Only the slow rise and fall of his breath showed that he was still alive. Outside, the first plum blossom bloomed white against white, stubborn against the cold. It trembled under a single drop of melting frost, and still it did not fall. The storm had not yet passed. It had only learned to wait. Spring did not come easily to the Tar residence that year. It crept in hesitantly, like a guest unsure if it was welcome. The frost withdrew, the ponds thawed, and pale shoots of green pierced through the earth. Yet beneath the sunlight, a quiet grief still lingered, faint as incense smoke after prayer. Zhao lady never fully recovered. Her laughter faded, her silks lost their sheen. The servants who once crowded her halls now passed in silence. No one spoke of the child again. Some said she began to pray more. Others said she merely stared at the plum trees for hours, waiting for something to bloom. As for Gudwan, he grew thinner. Though his composure never wavered, he still rose before dawn, still painted and embroidered, still served the household tea with both hands. But those who watched closely noticed how his sleeves hung looser, how the light dimmed behind his gaze. The whispers had not ceased. They had only gone quiet, the way a wound quiets before it scars. Then, one evening near the end of spring, the master returned early from the capital. The rain had followed him home, steady and cold. He stepped into Jingyi Court, unannounced, the hem of his robe damp with travel. Inside, a single lamp burned, its flame trembling in the draught. Jiuduan was there, kneeling before the window, sorting through a small chest. Within lay only a few folded robes, a brush, a piece of Haiti, things that once meant nothing, now gathered as if for departure. When it tourned, their eyes met, one weary, one uncertain. Neither spoke at first. The rain filled the silence, steady as a heartbeat. At last, Launchi said quietly, "Where will you go?" Shuduan bowed slightly to the south, where the winters are gentler. The master's gaze lowered to the chest, then rose again. "You mean to leave me," he said, though his tone was not accusing, only tired, like a man watching a candle gutter out. Gudan smiled, faintly. "I mean to live. I was wrong. I doubted what I should have cherished," Launchi said. The words fell softly, almost lost to the rain. "But—" Gudwa heard them. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, Gently, he closed the chest and set it aside. The motion was simple, yet in it lay an unspoken answer, a pause between leaving and staying. Outside, thunder rolled far away, deep and low. When Lansu reached out, his hand brushed the other's cheek. A gesture unsure, hesitant, yet real. Gudon did not move away. In the wavering lamplight, the reflections merged upon the floor, two shadows drawn together and made whole again. Later, when the rain finally ceased, dawn crept through the mist like a soft sigh. The air smelled of wet earth and new blossoms. The bamboo leaves dripped silver, and in the courtyard, the first of the peach flowers had opened to pale, tender, unafraid. From that day on, the household spoke of peace returning. Zhao Lady moved quietly to the outer quarters, devoting her days to prayer. The servants no longer whispered, and Jingu Court, once shrouded in frost, bloomed again with color. Every morning, the master was seen there, a book in one hand, a cup of tea in the other, seated beside the window where Juduan embroidered. No one dared to speak of their past, for it was written already in silence, stitched between breaths and glances. Outside, the bamboo rustled, the light fell through the lattice in golden threads, and the fragrance of plum and rain lingered still faint, eternal. The halls of Jingyu Court were silent. Even the wind had forgotten to stir. And there, between two hearts long frozen, the frost began to fade. Thank you for listening. I hope this story has brought you a moment of peace.